Good evening, everybody. Welcome, everyone. I'm both on Instagram and I'm on Facebook because we are so excited. Well, if you don't know me, my name is Andreia Marshall. I am with the Spiritist Federation of Florida, just one component of an amazing board of directors. So I am here on their behalf, and I'm one of the directors, basically the director of events. And so we decided to do this live today to promote something that is very special to us, that is very dear to us, and it's the release of a new book. Some of you already saw that it is available on Amazon, it is available on Kindle, and very soon to be available on Apple Books. But we haven't talked about it, and we haven't really promoted the importance of such an event for the Spiritist Federation of Florida. If you have any questions, please let me know. If you're live here with us on Instagram, or if you're on Facebook, we are going to be taking questions. And as you can see on my banner, I will not be doing this work alone today. I have a friend who is going to be with us, and he's going to be basically reviewing this book with us, basically letting us know a little bit about the book, about his thoughts, and we have some questions. But before we get into it, I'd like to invite you to do the opening prayer with us. We are so grateful for this moment, and we can't really start a live such as this one without elevating our thoughts to the benevolent spirits that are with us right now, that are with us always, in gratitude for having yet another amazing book in our hands with the illuminated pages that the benefactor Léon Denis brought us so long ago, yet so actual, so modern, so up to date with the content that we are going to find in this new book that is being released today. We are very grateful for the translators that worked with us in order to get this translated from the original French. So please bless Daryl Kimball and Marcia Saiz for their amazing work, and also our art contributor, Jonis Limas. Thank you so much, dear spirits and dear God, for allowing us to be present today, and so be it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody. So we are here on the release of a new book that I'm going to be sharing here with you guys right now. It is the 4 short works by Léon Denis. Some of you guys are acquainted with who Léon Denis is and the importance for Spiritism, and for anybody who is just a book reader because of his poetic and his philosophical way. And in my view, whenever I want to get closer to God, it is in reading some of these books because of the eloquence, because of the beauty in the words that he brings us. So 4 short works in reality is a book compilation. Léon Denis was not only responsible for writing some amazing books that have already been translated from the original French into Portuguese, into English, into Spanish, but these specific 4 booklets, and one of them is a brochure, actually it's a pamphlet. We decided to combine it into just one book to make it something that is special, that opens up with a beautiful story. And David is going to be telling us a little bit about the structure of this book that is made up of 4 books. The first one called Giovanna, which is the author's very first work. He actually, Léon Denis, is responsible for this story, beautiful story, and I'm going to let David get into that. But then he also provides us with the purpose of life, in which he's going to address questions for us from a spiritist point of view. And then he also has the afterlife and the survival of the being, with the objection of actually bringing us official science that are refuted one by one, calling upon new testimonies that had just been recorded all over Europe at the time in 1900s in America. And it is an enriched booklet with new facts, and the short work is going to offer us a precise answer to the question of the being's survival after death. I mean, this is a very all the time question, right? What happens to us after the death of the physical body? And he does it beautifully. And then he's going to also bring us the doctrinal and practical synthesis of spiritualism. But I'm not going to get into all those four. Like as I said before, David is going to be responsible for doing that for us. But before I get into this, I did want to present Léon Denis a little bit, and the importance that he has for us in Spiritism. So if you do not know, Léon Denis was born in France, Faux, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Foug, to be more specific, in 1846. He was actually a self-taught philosopher, a writer. He was also a public speaker. He was really young when he got acquainted with Spiritism, and he grew up in a very modest type of condition, educating himself, eventually becoming a very passionate advocate of Spiritism. And his role in Spiritism, which a lot of people don't know about, is that when he was a young man, after reading Allan Kardec's, if you know Allan Kardec, the codifier of Spiritism, he read the Spirit's book. He became one of the most eloquent defenders and philosophical interpreter after Kardec's death. And some people will go as far as calling him the apostle of Spiritism. He emphasized a lot the moral and the philosophical dimension of Spiritism, which is really important, and not just the mediumistic or the paranormal type of aspect, which is in the beginning is what really draws a lot of people's interest into Spiritism, is mediumship and the paranormal. And he actually went further. He went into the moral and the philosophical dimensions of Spiritism. He built upon Allan Kardec's foundations, but he also offered his own impressions and emphasis. And this is something very special about him, because his key ideas was in promoting the immortality of the soul. He was also promoting the view of reincarnation as a moral and spiritual evolution tool. That's why we are reincarnated. He also talked a lot about the moral responsibilities, focusing on the role of free will, spiritual progress through the knowledge and charity, as understood by Christ, benevolence, indulgence, and forgiveness, and the communication with spirits as a very legitimate and enlightening practice, if known how to do it and the purpose for which we actually do this. So he helped a lot the dissemination to keep Spiritism alive and respected in France at that time, and also abroad during the period of time in which faded into Allan Kardec's death. And he continues to have this impact on us still today, particularly very influential in countries like Brazil, like where Spiritism continues to be a major spiritual movement today. So why is this important for us? Let's talk a little bit about the Spiritist Federation of Florida. The Spiritist Federation of Florida was founded in 1987, and we keep alive the spirit of Benjamin Rodriguez, who not only founded the Spiritist Center here in Miami, the Bezerra de Menezes Spiritist Center, but he was also responsible, along with others, to find this amazing organization that is still ongoing today. And through the ages, many different directors have brought up this federation to where we are today. So there is like an echo of goodness that precedes us, and it is still up to date here. And we think of so many people that contributed to the Spiritist Federation of Florida that are discarnate and are incarnate as well. So a huge hello to some of the board members that are watching us right now, and some of the other people that are volunteers and friends of ours and that are with us today, because this is the first book that we are actually I'm playing with my thing, sorry about that. This is the very first book that the Spiritist Federation of Florida is releasing. And the importance is because a lot of times what is going to make an impact, what is going to make a bang are books. Books stay with us. We read a book, we reread a book. And I saw a saying the other day that said, nobody reads the same book only once, because the person is no longer the same when they pick up the book the second time, and the book is no longer the same because the person is no longer the same. So as we grow and as we evolve, our understanding of contents, of wholesome titles such as the one that we are about to release, really stays with us. It makes an impact. Just like the book, the Spirit's book, which was released in 1857 and is still having such an impact on a lot of people. Now we have Léon Denis helping us out. And so today is a significant date because it's the Spiritist Federation of Florida's very first title that is being released, the first of many, we hope, in the dissemination of Spiritism. But enough about me, enough about talking about the Federation. I want to bring on board David Walkden. He is not only a friend, but I'm going to introduce him properly with his bio. He was born in Manchester, England, and he's earned a degree in physics from the University of New York in the UK. Subsequently, he actually followed a career in the healthcare sector, alternating between project management and managing manufacturing plants. Initially working in the UK, his work took him overseas, spending a total of 11 years in Brazil. So he does understand Portuguese and speaks a little bit. And he currently lives in North Miami Beach with his wife, Fatima, another great friend of ours. And he's now happily retired. Happy for us as well, because he has the time to do what he's doing today and reading books, so we can review it and bring it to you so that you have an understanding as to why we should pick up the book that is being promoted. His first encounter with Spiritism came about 15 years ago through the invitation to come to the Conscious Living Spiritist group in Miami. It's actually my spiritual home, and we are glad to have our doors open to anybody who wants to attend. And although somewhat skeptical at first, he slowly was taken by the teachings, and he became an avid student. He is now a dedicated worker at the center. He facilitates study groups, and occasionally he does deliver talks at the weekly meetings. But more than that, David is also a very active volunteer for the Spiritist Federation of Florida, the annual events that we have in the book sector. We couldn't do the dissemination of the books without his work, without his presence, without his commitment and dedication for something that he believes in. So I would like to welcome David. Hi, David.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And it's a pleasure and it's an honor to be with you. And I'm looking forward to contributing what I know about the book.
Amazing. Thank you so much, David, for being with us and being willing to speak about this book. So what I wanted to ask you from your perspective, from the reader's perspective, is can you provide us a little bit about the structure of the book?
Surely. But first of all, I'd like to compliment you on the idea of bringing 4 different works of Denis all together in one compilation, one book. Because when you look at the four stories, as he calls them, they are very different from approach, right? As you mentioned, the first story is a novella. It's a beautiful story, Giovanna, set in Italy on the banks of the Lake Como. And in typical Léon Denis style, he goes into some beautiful, eloquent descriptions of the lake and the mountains and the flowers, very, as is usual, poetic and very captivating. To be honest, I am not a novella fan. I'm not the book that's like. I come to Spiritism from a very much a scientific point of view, but this book, really, this first chapter on Giovanna, it really captured my attention. In fact, when Andrea sent it to me and asked me to read it, I started it. And I didn't finish till I got to the end. I was so enthralled by not just the story, and the story is important. There's a lot of spiritual messages in there, but it's a great start to start the book. The second part of the book is really this rationale for the problem of existence, and I think in total it's more of a philosophical approach. Okay, he talks about what is the purpose of life? The existential questions of where do we come from? Why are we here? What's the purpose? And of course, the obvious one after that is what happens when we die. So he goes through, duty, freedom, problems of existence. He goes into the spirit and matter. And it's only about, 30, 40 pages, but it really does bring the philosophical rationale behind Spiritism, right? The third part, again, Andreia mentioned, is more the evidence from what they call the practical spiritism side, the scientific spiritualism. And you have to understand that it was written 130 years ago, thereabouts. But it did go into a very thorough analytical research into mediumship, with a lot of other mediums and very highly professional, even scientific crooks and other physicists and scientists at the time that all seem to endorse this concept that there are mediums who can commute with the spirits, and therefore there is life after death. And then the last part of the book really is, I like to look at it as more like a mini spirits book. He did the same format of Kardec with questions and answers, and it's basically the doctrinal and practical synthesis of spiritualism, again in a question and answer format. So in a nutshell, these four elements, these four come together beautifully, I'm really enjoyed and having the opportunity to study it and share my thoughts with Andreia.
Thank you so much, David. I just wanted to say hi to people that are joining. What I'm doing actually is speaking to David Walkden, who's joining us via YouTube and Facebook. And unfortunately, I couldn't have him on the Instagram Live, but just getting his perspective on the structure of the book. I want to ask you, David, because he brought up a lot of names of scientists and people who had an influence as far as the dissemination of spiritualism in the 1800s. And something that if we read today, with science catching up to a lot of what he's written, I want to ask you, do you think that from the book, what we read, do you think that science has provided any evidence or insights about life after death and the survival of the soul of human consciousness? Do you think that we've gotten there based on also what you read from the book?
Well, there's definitely no doubt about that. In my opinion, there's a strong convergence of science and a lot of, particularly through medical science. Again, the evidence that Léon Denis brought in that third part of the book was more mediumship. And of course, even today, mediumship is one of the strongest area of evidence that supports this whole concept of life after death and continuation of the soul and communications. But if you look today, there is so much evidence, starting in the 70s with Ian Stevenson, where he started to study past life memories in young children, and then that was when he passed away in the early 2000s. It's that department's carried on, and it's now a big department. It's the Department of Perceptual Studies at the University of Virginia, and part of that group is Bruce Grayson, who's very much involved in near-death experiences studies, and there's other neurologists and certain other people that are all part of the group. So again, from the 1970s onwards, we have past life memories in young children. We then have the contribution of even Brian Weiss, where past life regressions, and that's an established technique now among psychologists and therapists. Then near-death experiences. Now that's been so much accepted with the advent of better resuscitation techniques. More and more people who go into coma and are able to be resuscitated with all the modern medicine. Roughly, it's been established 8 to 10% have memories of this out-of-body and past life experiences. And you only need to just Google past near-death experiences, and there's a whole wealth of interviews and qualified medics talking about that. even to the extent that some hospitals now have a standard questionnaire for somebody who does come out of this situation of a coma and resuscitated, to see if they had a past life experience. So it's getting more and more accepted within the medical community.
Amazing.
So, well, and there's others as well. Okay, even last week, a few weeks ago, Dr. Alexander was in Orlando, and he was an amazing hour talk, which I was there, and again, he's doing some tremendous work on, again, evidence. And I just want to finalize by, mediumship still is probably the best, most concrete evidence of life after death. When you see the works of Chico and Divaldo, of course, just amazing. When you really get into that, how can one refute that this is fraud? Obviously not. So.
Yeah, you mentioned, I just wanted to bring out to anybody who may be watching, Dr. Alexander Almeida, this amazing contributor also and professional and scientist. He actually published some really phenomenal content. So if you're interested in it, you can send us a message. You can see here on the banner that you can contact it at Spiritist Federation FL on Instagram and Facebook, but you can also send us a message if you want at info@spiritistfederation.us, and we can send you a copy of this documents that he published. And it's been making a lot of noise because of the content in it and the clarity and the amazing investigative work of Dr. Alexander Almeida. And David mentioned here two great mediums that we've come to know. One is Francisco Cândido Xavier. We have so many books by Francisco Cândido Xavier that he published in the 1940s, in the 1950s, and science is catching up to a lot of what he said, especially in the study of mediumship, in how it actually comes to be, and the pituitary gland and all that, the great stuff. And then Divaldo Franco, who just discarnated, and his contribution also more in the dissemination of the books throughout the world and here in the United States as well, the importance of his work in disseminating Spiritism. So thank you for mentioning those, David, because a lot of people wonder, are these books also available in English and Portuguese, other than Portuguese? And yes, they are. The book, it's beautiful, right? Would you agree that the way that it's been? Tell me a little bit about what you felt as you were reading the chapters.
Well, when I reflect and when I completed the book, I thought it was a great read. Did it add much to my knowledge of Spiritism? No, perhaps not. Maybe one or two details here and there. But the way he presents the information, that when you read it, for me, it just re-emphasized and made me more confident in the belief system that I'm following, right? It just increased my belief to the next level, should we say. The way it's written, and perhaps I could just give you a little, can I read a little bit? With time?
Please, we have time, please.
Okay. My battery's my phone battery's at 20%. Let me just, I'll talk first, and then I'll get my wife to get my charger connected. Okay.
That's fine.
The purpose of life, the second part of the book, the rational solution to the problem of existence. The fourth part is about the harmony of the universe, and he starts off by saying, given the existence of an given the existence of an intelligent and rational principle within us, the sequence of causes and effects makes us go back to the source from which that principle flows in order to explain its origin. And then he goes on to say, in their poor, insufficient language, humans call this source God. God is the center from which all the powers of the universe emanate. And, he uses language that is beautiful, but simple and understandable. In fact, that was one of his great contributions, I think. He was able to bring, after Kardec passed and he continued the mantle, he was the one who was able to reach out more to the populace, shall we say. I mean, Kardec is very, very, there's a lot of information there, but some of the way that Kardec writes, because of the subject matter, it's not easy. And again, I think Léon contributed with his style of prose which is on one hand beautiful, but on the other hand, the prose adds to the message, right? It enhances the message. So it's doubly us. And then, he goes on to talk about God, and I'll confess to you, even after 15 years in Spiritism, I still have problems understanding God. We talk about the attributes, and it really is difficult to relate to. And I was saying to Andreia the other day, that was like the first question in the Spirit book is, what is God, not who is God? And he goes on to explain, to give all the attributes. But then I think it's question 9, he says, when Kardec asks, well, how will we ever get to really understand God? And the answer comes back that, well, only when we've reached a real high. Excuse me a second. Just let me get my phone recharging. There we go. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Only, when we reach the higher level, spiritual levels, we'll be able to understand God. So that gives me solace. I don't have to worry about it. I like to think of God as the big four. In that fact, let me just see if I can find the quotation here. I can't find it quite just now. But anyway, God said, Léon Denis said, God is the force, and reminds me of Star Trek, right? Let the force be with you. The force is with us all. And, I'll leave it there.
I'm glad that we're touching on the topic of God, because like you said, the harmony of the universe, what is bringing me here. And while you look for your own quote, I'm going to quote something on the book that he wrote. He said, God, it will be said, has been presented in such strange and sometimes revolting ways by individuals of various sects that the modern mind has turned away from him. But what do such sectarian ravings matter? To claim that God can be lessened by human words is like saying that Mont Blanc and the Himalayas can be defiled by the breath of Not. The truth hovers radiant, dazzling, far above theological obscurities. To catch a glimpse of this truth, thought must detach itself from narrow precepts and vulgar practice, and must reject puerile forms in which some religions have enclosed the supreme ideal. And then he says, thought must study God in the majesty of his works. But what you said, David, is very important, because a lot of people have a hard time connecting, thinking about God, for not understanding God. And what is God? It's the very first question of the Spirit's book. What is God? Right? Not who is God, but rather what is God? And so how intelligent was and inspired was Allan Kardec to pose the question in such a way, so that we could have a glimpse on the way that we can understand that God is the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. And so we are not dealing with an old man sitting up in a cloud, pointing a finger of us, being punitive. Like Joanna de Angelis, the spirit author who writes through Divaldo Franco. This is a live about books, so let's talk about books. She presents us God as this fatherly figure, right? And so, and we can go back 2,000 years ago when Jesus also showed us a God that is very different than these strange and revolting ways in which many different religions have shown God to be. Our Father, which art in heaven, is the prayer that he taught us, showing us a way in which we can connect to God, in which we can have a deeper moment between a father and a child, right? In such a way that we can speak to God, we can feel God. And so I want to ask you about your own road towards your relationship in which you see God, different from religions, but religiosity. How has this book provided you with more insight on God, and what was your own trajectory from when you started on Spiritism until now? I know you have an interesting past, and we have time, so I want to hear you.
Yeah, I was brought up in England with loving and amazing parents, but my father was definitely atheist. My mother would go to the Methodist church and drag me off there to Sunday school until I got old enough to say no more, no more. But then, when I was growing up I was at university in the 60s, it was the time of the Troubles in Ireland, Northern Ireland, which, outwardly it was between Protestants and Catholics. It was more between the invaders, should we say, and the rich and the poor, but a lot of layers to it. But it just made me more distant to any form of religion. And then later in life, with all the terrorists and acts and so much violence and destruction in this world through the name of religion, it just left me, no, it wasn't through apathy, it wasn't through inertia. In fact, I really tried to understand, but never could really get any attachment to religions. As I saw it, it was what was available to me in my knowledge. And then when I got into go from the 1960s to me in my 60s, started feeling, well, it's coming soon. There's only two things more certain in life. One is you pay taxes, and one is you're going to die, right? So as I got close, I went through a few challenges in life in that late period of my life, and then looked out for something. And when I first got into the Spiritism, as you mentioned earlier, I thought it was a bit weird. I couldn't really understand it, but I met a lot of very intelligent professional people, had some great discussions, and slowly I got more and more involved. So that was my trajectory. The 15 years I've been studying quite intensely, even more so now that I'm retired. But again, as I mentioned earlier, this book is nothing really new, but it just really, makes it all so much more concrete. It just has this, and I would recommend it for anybody who's been studying Spiritism for a while, but also as a book to someone who's knows nothing about Spiritism. I think it is. I mean, when people ask me about Spiritism, I used to give them what is Spiritism by Kardec, which is a very concise book, with the questions and answers with this, the skeptic and the priest and so forth. But this one, I feel, it actually is more so. In fact, I have the joy of traveling to see my son in Australia in 2 weeks, and I want to take him a copy because we've had some discussions, but I haven't been able to convince him yet what line of thought I want. So that answers the question.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much. We don't want to keep this too long, but I just wanted to do a breakdown of some of the content that you may find before I throw David one last question. But as we said in the beginning, we have a novel, if you will, Giovanna, a Spiritist short story, which is a fiction written by Léon Denis. The purpose of life and a rational solution to the problem of existence. He's going to talk about to those who suffer. There's a beautiful, beautiful letter to those who suffer. Duty and freedom. He talks about the problem of existence, spirit and matter. He talks about the harmony of the universe, as we mentioned, successive lives, justice and progress, the final objective, experimental evidence. He's going to bring us as well, and the summary and conclusion. And then we go into the third book, which is the afterlife and the survival of the being. And then finally, the doctrinal and practical synthesis of spiritualism in questions and answers format. So he's got an introduction in which he's going to bring us about human beings, about reincarnation, where reincarnation occurs, the origin of life on earth, its spirits, God, the doctrine of Spiritism, and experimental practices. And he finalizes with consolation, ecstatics, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And that's the book. I mean, this is the book that we are releasing today. We want to, again, we mentioned in the opening prayer, but I want to again thank Daryl, Kimball, and Marcia Size for the work that they did so beautifully from the original French. This book is available in paperback. It's also available in hardcover. If you're like me, the old books, they're always had hardcovers, and it's also available in ebooks. So if you don't like to carry on books, you do like me. I have so many books in my book accounts that if I was to put that on I would pay excessive baggage or weight in the airport. So David, just one more question for you. What was your favorite thing about the book, and why do you think other people should read it?
Difficult to say what is my favorite thing, because I've already mentioned the prose, the eloquence, the poetry, and his use of words. I think perhaps because the core of Spiritism is reincarnation, right? And the justice in reincarnation. You're not going to complete all the intellectual, moral development in this one life. And that is the core of Spiritism. It's a Christian philosophy. It follows the teachings of Jesus. But even though Jesus, in an indirect way, hinted on the future life and reincarnation, but this is what Spiritism is all about. And perhaps the chapter most important for me is that second part about the purpose of life and the successive life, where he goes into the justice of reincarnation.
Very nice. So if you were to tell somebody, a materialist, why you should read this book, what would you say?
Well, first of all, don't be blinkered, by open your mind to some new concept. Because when I've talked to a few people, when they ask, what's all this Spiritism thing? And the first thing is, do you believe in ghosts? And yes, partly, but there's a lot more to it than that. And you need to study. That's right. You can't give an elevator speech and convert somebody in 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be studied, but you need to have that initial interest, that drive, that desire to, question, if this life is all that is, does it really make sense? That's the approach I would take.
Very nice. Very nice. David, I want to thank you for participating with us today, taking the time, away from Fatima and what you could be doing something else. And we are so glad to have you, not only as a contributor, but a dear friend, a true brother to us. So thank you so much. There will be more books to come out, and I'm gonna ping David to do this again because it was a lot of fun. And I want to leave you with this paragraph from Léon Denis to those who suffer. And he's going to say, "It is to you, O brothers and sisters in humanity, to all of you weighed down by the burden of life, to you overwhelmed by life's bitter struggles, worries, and trials, to you I dedicate these pages. It is for your sake, the afflicted and disinherited of this world, that I have written them. Humble pioneers of truth and progress, I have put in these pages the fruit of my vigils, my reflections, my hopes, and all that has comforted and supported me on my walk here below. May you find some useful lessons, a little light to illuminate your way. May this modest work be for your saddened spirits what shade is for the worker burnt by the sun, what the cool, fresh spring in the arid desert is to the eyes of the thirsty wanderer." Just to give you an idea, of some of what we can encounter in this book. I want to thank you guys for following us, for watching. This is going to stay recorded. So if by any chance you have any questions you want to write to David, as you can see on the banner, we have his email here, djwalkden@gmail.com. And he is willing to answer any emails that he may receive. And you can also reach out to us at Spiritist Federation FL on Facebook, on Instagram, and by email as well. So thank you for you who've been following us on Instagram. Thank you so much for participating with us. In about an hour, Marcelo Neto is going to be with Artur Valadares promoting the same book in Portuguese. So if you want to join that, it's going to be at 8 p.m. and you're more than welcome to join us. So have a good night. Thank you so much for participating with us. And until next time. Thanks, David.
Thank you.